Imagine sitting in a crowded bar in Washington, D.C., watching the world go by. You see a couple on a first date, but the guy is stuck in a 10-minute monologue staring at a spot on the wall above his date's head. You see people staring into their phones, and you realize something chilling. Everyone has their eyes open, but nobody is actually seeing each other. David Brooks, the author of How to Know a Person, realized he was part of the problem. He was doing what he calls the size up, that instant, judgmental scan we all do to categorize people based on their clothes, their tattoos, or their politics. We think we're being observant, but we're actually just being diminishers. We make people feel small and invisible because we're too trapped in our own heads to truly see them. Why are we so bad at this? For Brooks, it started with his upbringing. He describes it as think Yiddish, act British. His family was intellectual and reserved. They discussed Victorian funerary monuments at Thanksgiving instead of their feelings. This created a detached personality, a guy who felt most alive when writing alone and who would literally look at a person's shoes to avoid a vulnerable moment. This emotional blindness has a cost. Brooks once caught a shattered baseball bat at a game, a trophy most fans would scream for joy over. But he just sat there, stone-faced, because he had the emotional capacity of a head of cabbage. This isn't just a personal quirk. It's a societal epidemic. We live in an age of creeping dehumanization, where stimulation replaces intimacy and judgment replaces understanding. The numbers back this up. Strangers read each other accurately only 20% of the time. Even more shocking, the longer many couples are married, the less accurate they become at reading each other. They stop seeing the living, evolving person in front of them and start seeing a fixed version from years ago. This mutual blindness destroys everything. A McKinsey study found that while managers thought employees were quitting for more pay, the employees were actually leaving because they didn't feel seen or valued by their organizations. Human beings need recognition as much as they need food and water. To be invisible is the cruelest punishment we can devise. But there is another way. There are illuminators, people who have a persistent curiosity about others. They shine a light that makes others feel bigger, deeper, and lit up. Think of Harry Nyquist at Bell Labs. He wasn't the most famous researcher, but the most productive scientists all had one thing in common. They had lunch with him. Why? Because he listened, he got inside their heads, and he brought out their best. To become an illuminator, we have to fight through our own psychological armor. We have to overcome egotism, being too self-centered to try. We have to silence the anxiety that makes us worry more about how we look than who the other person is. And we have to abandon naive realism, the arrogant belief that our view of the world is the only objective one. We treat people as things to be used rather than beings to be befriended. We use essentialism to stereotype and stack assumptions about people based on a single fact. But if we want to thrive in the age of AI, we have to become exceptionally good at the one thing machines can't do, creating a deep person-to-person connection. Seeing someone well is a creative act. When you truly behold someone, you aren't just looking at pieces of them or their life story. You are seeing how their consciousness creates their reality. It's the bliss of human connection, the feeling that says, I know you, through and through. But to get there, we have to learn the actual craft, the concrete social actions that build a bridge between two souls. And it all starts with realizing that the untrained eye is simply not enough. Because we are flying blind, navigating the incredibly complex terrain of the human soul with the emotional equivalent of a toy compass. And we wonder why we keep crashing. Think about the people you believe you know best. Your family, your spouse, your oldest friends. You probably feel a deep sense of certainty about them. You can predict what they will order at a restaurant or how they will react to a bad joke. But predictability is not the same thing as visibility. There is a heartbreaking story that perfectly captures this illusion of intimacy. It involves the writer Vivian Gornick. When Vivian was just 13, her father died suddenly of a heart attack. Her mother, Bess, was completely undone. Before this, Bess had relished being the woman in their Bronx apartment building with the perfect, loving marriage. Without it, she collapsed into a primitive, all-consuming grief. She would literally thrash on the floor, her veins bulging. Now, look at the psychological dynamic here. The mother's grief sucked all the oxygen out of the room. She was terrified of sleeping alone, so she would pull young Vivian close to her in bed. Physically, you couldn't be closer. But emotionally, Vivian was completely invisible. She was reduced to a mere prop in her mother's tragic drama. The mother wasn't seeing a frightened 13-year-old girl who had also just lost her father. She was only seeing an audience for her own pain. This is the ultimate danger of the diminisher mindset. It doesn't just happen with strangers at a bar. It happens in our most intimate spaces. We fall victim to what psychologists call the static mindset. Have you ever gone back home to visit your parents as a full-grown adult only to realize they are still treating you like you are 15 years old? It's infuriating, isn't it? But why does it happen? Because at some point in the past, they built a mental model of you. That model might have been highly accurate 10 or 20 years ago, but then you grew up, you suffered, you evolved, your worldview shifted. Yet they never updated the software. They never updated their model of who you are. They are loving a ghost, a past version of you that simply no longer exists. So how do we break this cycle? How do we become illuminators? It begins with a profound shift in how we define a human being. A person is not a point of data. A person is not a demographic or a voting block or a static collection of traits. A person is a living process. An illuminator approaches every interaction with a radical, almost aggressive sense of curiosity. They don't just ask, "What do you do for a living?" They ask, "How did you get so brave?" Or, "What is the crossroads you are at right now?" They understand that to know you, they have to map the unique landscape of your subjective reality. Let's break down the architecture of a true illuminator. First, they possess a quality called accompaniment. This is a beautiful, demanding concept. It means I am not trying to fix you. I am not trying to manage you or solve your problems. I am simply walking alongside you. I am paying deep, unhurried attention to the rhythm of your life. Think about how rare that is. When someone comes to us with a problem, our immediate, egotistical instinct is to jump in with advice. "Oh, you should do this." Or, "When that happened to me, I did that." We think we are being helpful, but we are actually just pulling the spotlight back onto ourselves. We are shutting down their exploration. An illuminator, on the other hand, knows the absolute power of the pregnant pause. They know how to sit in the messy, uncomfortable silence and simply say, "Tell me more about how that felt." Second, illuminators are masters of the good talk. They don't waste time swimming in the shallow end of the pool, talking about the weather or the traffic. They plunge straight into the deep end. They create an environment of psychological safety where the other person feels brave enough to take off their armor. But creating that safety requires immense skill. It requires mastering hard conversations, because true connection isn't just about sharing joyful moments. It's about navigating the darkest rooms of the human experience together. What do you say to someone who is drowning in grief? What do you say to someone who has just lost their job, or their marriage, or their sense of purpose? The diminisher panics. The diminisher offers toxic positivity. Everything happens for a reason, or time heals all wounds. Which, let's be honest, is just a polite way of saying, "Please stop being sad. Your pain is making me uncomfortable." The illuminator doesn't do that. The illuminator practices the art of empathy. They don't try to silver line the cloud. They climb right into the dark cloud with you. They ask the terrifying essential questions, like, how were you shaped by your sufferings? Because they know that a person's struggles are the very forge where their character is hammered into shape. And this brings us to a critical realization. Empathy is not just a soft, warm feeling in your chest. Empathy is a complex, cognitive, and emotional operation. It requires you to consciously override your own ego, to project your imagination into the mind of another, and to accurately decode the subtle, unspoken signals they are sending out. It is the difference between looking at a painting and actually feeling the agony of the artist who painted it. But even empathy has a blind spot, because no matter how deeply we care, we are still trapped behind our own eyes. To truly cross the gap between two human beings, we need something more powerful than just feeling. We need to understand the art of the life story. Because we aren't just biological machines or sets of data points. We are the protagonists of our own epic, unfolding novels. To truly know a person, you have to know the story they have written about their own life, the narrative they use to make sense of their suffering, their triumphs, and their purpose. Most of us walk around with what Brooks calls a static mindset. We see people as they are in this exact second, frozen like a photograph. But an illuminator sees people in motion. They understand that every person is in the middle of a life task. Think about this. At any given moment, someone is working through a primary challenge. Maybe they're in the phase of building their identity, trying to prove to the world that they matter. Or maybe they are in the generativity phase, focused on giving back to the next generation. If you don't know what task a person is currently working on, you are just looking at a snapshot of a moving train. You are missing the direction, the momentum, and the struggle. This leads us into the deep, often hidden world of personality. Brooks argues that we need to ask a fundamental question. What energy do you bring into the room? We all have these deep inherited patterns. Psychologists talk about the big 5 traits, but for our purposes, it's about understanding the frequency of a soul. Some people are naturally over-controlled. They keep a tight lid on their emotions, calculating every move like a chess player. Others are under-controlled, letting their feelings spill out like a river in flood. These aren't just personality quirks. They are the filters through which people see the entire world. An illuminator knows how to adjust their own frequency to match the person across from them. But where do these frequencies come from? They come from our ancestors. An illuminator knows that you aren't just an individual. You are the latest chapter in a story that started long before you were born. The ways your grandfather handled fear in a crisis, or the ways your mother experienced joy after a long struggle, are literally woven into your nervous system. To know you, I have to know the ghosts that walk with you. I have to understand the family myths and the historical traumas that shape the way you perceive safety and danger. Now, think about the conversations you had today. Most of them were likely shallow and talk the news, the weather, the office politics. We do this because it's safe. It's the DC think tank rules of life. No emotional ardor, just information exchange. But an illuminator is a master of the right questions. They don't waste time asking, what do you do? Instead, they might ask, if this period of your life was a chapter in a book, what would the title be? Or, what is the thing you've changed your mind about recently? They are looking for the incandescence of your spirit, the hidden fires that make you light up from the inside. This journey toward knowing others is ultimately the path to wisdom. Wisdom, as Brooks defines it, isn't about being an encyclopedia of facts. It's about having a compassionate understanding of other people. It's the ability to see the contradictions in someone, their rare flashes of fierceness, and their deep undercurrents of insecurity, and still see them as a whole, beautiful human being. It's what David Brooks felt when he looked at his wife standing by that white orchid. He wasn't seeing a list of her traits. He was beholding her soul. He was seeing how her unique consciousness creates her specific reality. In our modern age, we are surrounded by creeping dehumanization. We spend our lives on social media where stimulation replaces intimacy and judgment replaces understanding. We have built a society that gives us almost zero guidance on how to perform the most important activities of life, like how to sit with someone who is suffering, or how to disagree without poisoning a relationship. We focus on careers and data, but we marginalize the humanities, the very things that teach us what goes on in the minds of others. But here is the Hollywood hook for your own life. If you want to thrive in the age of artificial intelligence, you must become exceptionally good at the one thing a machine can never do. AI can calculate, it can predict, and it can simulate, but it can never behold. It can never look into your eyes with loving respect and acceptance and make you feel that you truly exist in the mind and heart of another. To be an illuminator is to give the ultimate gift, the gift of being seen. It is a powerfully creative act. When you beam the light of your attention on someone, you aren't just observing them, you are helping them blossom. So, as we wrap up this 3,000 word journey into the human soul, I want you to look around. The next time you are in a bar, a coffee shop, or sitting across from someone at your own dinner table, stop the size up. Silence the anxious noise in your own head. Stop trying to fix them and start trying to accompany them. Ask the questions that matter. Because in this age of blindness, being an illuminator is the most radical and necessary thing you can be. If you found value in this deep dive into the art of connection, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's a small step, but it helps us keep these deep conversations flowing like a river, building a community where nobody has to feel invisible. Thank you for walking this path with me. Until next time, keep your eyes open and really truly see the people around you.